back to Built by Design. So today we're going to be using the part we designed in the 2D sketching tutorial and turning that into 3D. So first off, we're going to right click, click extrude, and then go ahead and select the profile that we want. And then we're actually going to define the distance that we want to extrude this piece as opposed to pushing and pulling this piece as we would in Fusion. So we're going to make it a 1/4 inch thick. Select OK. Now we're going to come over here to the feature tree. This is a list of all the features used to create the part. Notice how this sketch is a part of the extrusion. The extrusion, when made, it consumes the stretch. What this means is you can go back in, edit the sketch, and it will actually push those changes to the 3D part. So essentially, this is the basis of associative modeling. So I can edit things post-creation. So we can actually edit the feature as well. So if we double click on extrusion, go back and I'm going to make it thinner, let's say 0.125. I'm actually going to keep it a 1/4 inch, so go back to that. Now this is the end of part marker. I made a couple sketches earlier, so we're going to move this end of part marker down to reintroduce those sketches back into the part. So now we're going to right click, select hole. Can add some holes to where those points are. We're going to make the termination go through all, so it goes through the entire plate no matter how thick that plate is. Now we're going to go define the radius of the hole, diameter of the hole, 0.19 thick. So notice how everything is specified is extremely precise. We know exactly what we're going to get when we use any tool in Inventor. Whereas with Fusion, the things are more look, feel versus over anything else really. So now we're actually going to go back into the feature tree. And open up the hole. So you can see how you can edit the whole post just like you can with the extrusion. We're not going to do that now. We're actually going to go into the sketch now and edit the sketch. So make this just a little bit longer. Actually it's shorter, let's see. Yeah, there we go. And now you'll see it's actually going to change the location of those 3 holes right there with the change of dimension. So now we're gonna close down that feature and move that into part marker down 1 more so that this last sketch is visible. So now we're gonna go and actually extrude this profile. So right click extrude. So it's going to be a cut, so select the profile that we want, then select cut in the dialog box. So notice how we're cutting a 1/4 inch thick. So what this is always going to do is cut actually a defined 1/4 inch thick. So if I select OK here and go back to the original extrusion and change the thickness of that extrusion, so I'm going to make it 0.375 for instance. So now you notice how there's a lip, it doesn't cut all the way through the part. So if we want to avoid that, we're going to actually select Control Z to go back to the original, and we're going to create an extent so that we're going to cut to that back face. So it's always going to cut to that back face. So no matter how thick we make that plate, it's always going to cut all the way through the plate. So now you see how that little distance is a little bit thin for me. So we're actually going to go back, open up the sketch again, double click on the dimension that I want to adjust. And notice how I've actually used a previous dimension within this dimension. So D15 is a previous dimension, the one actually up on the upper left. And we're using that to define the new dimension, so we can actually change the D15 and it would affect all of them. Essentially, it's like a variable that you would use in a normal algebraic expression. So we're gonna go make an arc, so there's some webbing in between that and the hole there. I'm gonna go and dimension the arc to the thickness that we want. Make this 0.125. Actually, you know, we're gonna go back and change this dimension again, and if we just select the dimension that we want it to associate with, it's actually gonna automatically bring it into the dimension right there, divide by 2, and we have 0.125. So now we select OK, And we're actually going to adjust the profile. So we're going to want to deselect that little webbing piece. Notice how this is actually pretty difficult to do. It's taking me a little bit of time to actually select this. So this is actually a product of how I created this sketch. It really kind of shows you how it's important that when you're creating sketches to do it in a way that makes it easy to turn it into 3D, because if you don't, it becomes somewhat painful. There we go, we have it selected, and I'm actually going to go up to the main ribbon again and create some fillets. So what these do is these round off the corners, so you can actually use this in Fusion as well. So we're going to select the edges that we want. So you can select edges actually through the part as well if you want to. Go ahead, select OK. And now we're actually going to go back into the sketch and we're going to change the thickness of that webbing so it's a little bit thicker. So it looks a little bit thin. So we're going to double click on that dimension and change it to, let's see, 1/4 inch. That sounds about right. There we go. So now notice how the fillets adjust accordingly, just as you would expect, just based on how you drew the part. So once again, this is how to turn sketching into 3D. Thanks for watching.